Hello War of the Visions fans, I'm Jockey Fox, and today I mainly want to talk about Veritas of the Flames and show you testing for some Veritas of the Flames teams that you might be able to build if you've gotten this guy up to even 120, which is what I'm going to be testing today. In the future I will update this with a 140 and well reincarnated version to see if he gets better performance, and I've also updated a number of the teams on the previous spreadsheet that just had missing data. I removed the ones that still have missing data because they're just not going to perform well, and I replaced them with Veritas of the Flames and also some teams that I can't test that I think are going to be interesting as well. And also with those updates, a number of things have changed. We have a brand new top 2 teams. The number 1 team, which came in first place on defense with a really astounding performance. It didn't really show up on offense. Not many people are using this for offense, but it's doing incredibly well on defense, and it came in third place versus Guild for all the teams tested overall, with a solid 2.33 defense. Now, where it really lets us down is its average of 2 on offense, but this team is narrowly in the lead. Second place is a Veritas of the Earth team. Now this one basically switched places with the other Veritas of the Earth team that was previously in the lead, which leans a lot more heavily Earth. Now the thing you'll notice about this data is that the number 1 unit on this whole sheet is Shuriken. I know you were expecting me to say a Veritas, but no, actually, it's basically teams that can run with Shuriken are doing well, and that's why Veritas of the Flames is out in front. The fire and wind synergy is quite strong, and she's also usable with Veritas of the Heavens. But this prominence in the meta on the JP side has pushed down the more earthen version of this team because it easily gets wrecked by Shuriken. However, the version of this team that includes a strike synergy and an ice unit has actually moved its way up to second place, both by improving its performance versus my guild, but also by greatly improving its performance and just showing up to begin with in guild battle. Now, it had some pretty impressive stats. The only day I could find it had 6 stars and 2 defense, which is excellent. It did not quite live up to that performance in the rest of the data found, but the fact that I found it on other days really helped out its score and allowed it to rise to the top, as it probably always should have been. Very strong strike synergy team here. This came in 4th place overall on offense and 3rd place on defense as well, so very cool. Moving into 5th place, we have a brand new team. This is Veritas of the Flames, Shalza, and One Wing Sephiroth. I did not expect this team to do quite as good as it did, but really it's showing its best on offense, where it just clears out ice very effectively. Veritas of the Flames seems to be pretty good into Gilgamesh, so when you really build on that synergy, you can really make this team quite strong. This also did 5th place versus the guild overall, clearing 82% of the guild in total. Pretty cool. Then the Veritas of the Earth team that did very poorly, at least for one day. This one day really drug down its performance. 1.4 stars and 1.3 defense was a really bad showing, but it did improve its clear rate against my guild, coming in at just over 80%, which is quite good. And this kind of stopped it from falling even further in the ranking, given that it's doing pretty bad in guild battle for the reasons we discussed earlier. And then in basically dead last, 12th place, we have Veritas of the Flames, Dario, and One Wing Sephiroth. This team did come in 2nd place on defense overall. The thing that's keeping it in 12th place is that at this point, this is the only team that actually has missing data. It very consistently gets exactly 2 defense, which is just an incredible performance, but it's not showing up at all on offense. This team, when tested, did clear about 78% of my guild, so everything tells me that if people start using this on offense, that its overall score will probably hop up to about 6th or 7th place. Speaking of things that should be higher on this ranking, in 13th place we have Veritas of the Earth, the brand new Earth Sodley from the JP side, and Ashen Mont for a very strong Earth tank and 2 very strong Earth DPS units. that are resilient. They're good at making their team resilient. You have overlapping AoE and general damage mitigation auras, and you have 2 DPS units with follow-up. So just a lot of power here. And if you assume an average performance versus guild, then this team should be in 3rd or 4th place overall. So this would be a very powerful contender. Not quite doing as good, but one of the better Veritas of the Heavens teams, in my opinion, all around, and coming in 4th place overall in defense on the JP side is Veritas of the Heavens, Volke, and Ramada the Astrolancer. And assuming an average guild performance, this should probably come in about 7th to 8th place itself. So not the best team, but definitely still a contender. And while it doesn't do nearly as well at offense, this is a team that does pretty consistently well on defense because of its variety of strategies, units, and just really different ways of, like, you have Veritas of the Heavens being a really good counter to Earth. You have Volke being a really good counter to single target damage, which also kind of leans into the follow-up damage from Earth units right now. It works pretty well into Sodley as well as Mont. So that can be pretty helpful too. And then Ramada has a little bit of a weakness to that. But again, when the first 2 units are good against it, you know, as 3 Pierce units, they really balance each other out quite well. So with all that being said, let's move into the footage. And first, we're going to check out our Earth teams. The better of the Earth teams in testing right now, or at least Veritas of the Earth teams, is a Rainbow Strike team that specifically includes Tifa. Also, Alaya's here just to be a general powerhouse, and she also synergizes quite well with Tifa too. And as you can see, this team was able to deal with most things. It was even able to deal some respectable damage to Gilgamesh, even while being shut down by the overall team of him, Lucio, and Sephiroth. But this matchup into Earth, I thought, was particularly interesting. One thing that specifically Tifa might be able to do against a team like this that would be really interesting is throwing in like a whole lot of Frostbite. But also, there's the potential for a bunch of defense penetration breaking from Veritas of the Earth. And yeah, that is... his follow-up damage is a really good counter to units like Alaya in the same way that Shurika really counters him incredibly well. Really similar dynamics. For the next Veritas of the Earth team, this came in 8th overall, despite being 1st previously due to some really poor guild battle performances really pulling its stars and defense down, but at least 3.6 stars is decent. It's kind of middling and average, although with the improvements and some reincarnations to Veritas of the Earth, bringing up to level 140, this team was able to, like its other counterpart, just generally do better against my guild and collect a few extra stars that it was missing when Veritas of the Earth was only at 120. This is pretty much to be expected. And a similar dynamic is going to happen with Veritas of the Flames. Veritas of the Flames right now, as I'm testing him, is a level 120. His teams are going to underperform, so take them with a grain of salt. They could be doing a good bit better. But unlike Veritas of the Earth, Veritas of the Flames doesn't have his LB yet, which is an incredibly powerful damage draining skill that could be really helpful for him and really work into his kit quite generally well. So that would be another improvement for him that would be pretty impactful, I think. So just really adding more and diversifying more to his kit in a really nice way. And then we have the mostly wind version of the team. 1st place overall, 1st place in defense, 3rd versus the guild. 2 stars on average, which is pretty terrible, but 2.33 defends on average, which is pretty legendary, and above 82%. Above 80% of the guild was cleared by this team as well, so it's pretty formidable, and one of the strongest teams that I've tested in some ways. Now, I would like to say that its poor performance on offense is a bit of a fluke, but it's actually performed kind of consistently poor on offense somehow, much like my battery life while I was recording this stuff. Rip my phone. Of course, that phone is getting pretty old. Like, I really need to maybe get some new ones, upgrade a little bit. Also, apologize for the constant fucking construction. I live in a hurricane zone, and it did some structural damage to not only the building I live in, but the ones around me too. So there's been pretty much constant construction of one type or another to the exteriors of these buildings. And I feel like they're working directly below me today. It's kind of rough. I'm sorry about that. But speaking of rough, this is generally a pretty rough team for Shurika. It's not a great team for Dario to go into, although he's tanking into them well. I don't generally like Veritas of the Flames using his Dragoon kit, but that actually did pretty good damage to Cloud, and decent damage and decent healing power down, maybe more importantly, to June to kind of hold her back as well. If he could have hit Mont too, the healing power down would have been pretty helpful for him, but here Shurika is pretty much shooting straight through him. She didn't quite manage to take him out because I think she didn't have her follow-up hit active, but it was pretty much that between her and winning. So here is the all-fire version of this team. As you can see, it did quite well. It didn't do well against evasion and other fire and wind. Basically, versions of this team that had a Shurika did better than it. It didn't do well into evasion. 5th place overall, 3rd place on defense, 5th place versus guild. 4.5 stars on offense is pretty... Wait, that should say 3rd place on offense. Yeah, 4.5 stars on offense is... I think there's now 2 separate work crews working around me at the moment. Please bear with me, and I hope that it doesn't come through clearly in the audio. But this isn't the best Gilgamesh team. Even though it has 2 Gilgamesh, the other units on the team are quite dated, but they are also potentially powerful and potentially like make Gilgamesh better. I don't see Gilgamesh a lot in mono ice teams. A lot of people are kind of whaling him into more brand new, I have the newest units teams, more typically. But he is pretty powerful with a number of combinations of ice units, both new and old. But that matchup, and even in a way, the way that he performed specifically into A2 there, really shows you that he's going to be great into Ice Slash, and there is so much, so very much Ice Slash, because he can easily get himself to, after buffs, like 50, 60, 70 easily, very easily, to 100 or more % slash resistance. Now, most units, at least in their kit, have a slash attack resistance penetration skill that they're going to use to kind of buff into him and normalize their damage against him. And he doesn't have much that he can do against that, unfortunately. Ooh, curse the whole team. But he does also have consistently about 40, maybe even 50% with the right build, ice resistance. So he can be particularly resistant to ice slash in general. Even if they have the slash penetration to do some damage, he can at least mitigate it with his elemental resistance. He's pretty good at that, so that can really be a big thing for him. But, oof. Oh, no, we almost did take him out, though. I did not expect that to happen, especially if he hadn't greedily eaten crystals, we actually could have won that. Huh. Good show. So this is the more fire-based variant with Dario. You could also probably do this with Shurika and it would do better, but I didn't test that version of the team. This came in 12th place overall, 2nd place on defense though. It had really good performance on defense, averaged 1 star, and that is with 2, not missing data necessarily, but like 2 honest-to-God whiffs, or it scored 0 points. But it did consistently get 2 stars on defense, which is stellar. Really amazing. So let's see it into the Gilgamesh Synergy team. As you can see, even though Gilgamesh is an ice unit, at least on this team, he's having trouble getting through Dario's magical barrier, or at least he was at first. And Dario is quickly countering him by taking the focus of his damage off of his allies, who are fire units, and should, in theory, take the damage relatively well. But he's holding them back. Yeah, my phone's still dying. But he's holding them back from doing so. And then the piece de la resistance on that plan is him getting the Berserk on Gilgamesh, which is just perfect in ruining his damage potential. I'm not sure that it turns off Seeking Plume, though. But I don't think they set that up in that match. This is a bait team that usually wants to bait in lightning. However, me having a wind unit is going to do some good things into them. We also got our curse on Mont. He's really going to be the healing unit for this team. So shutting that action down early is great. But my boy is getting a lot of damage in here. And you see that real good follow-up. They did not even really mess with Celeste, which is unusual. Like, she's not even the best unit. Maybe I shouldn't be using her on defense, honestly. I should probably find something better. But, yeah, they couldn't even take Celeste out. So this is going to be a water team. Will be interesting to see how we do into that. Each of the units are pretty good, but they're also a little bit behind the curve. Like, these are solidly bottom 5 of the top 10 of like top water units. Omnilus can be kind of impressive. She's like a less broken magical version of Elia the Alabaster in some ways. She also has like really cool guaranteed hit potential. But you can see that, at least on the right turns, Veritas of the Flames is doing pretty thick damage even to water units. And, I mean, not necessarily a fluke. Sephiroth is doing pretty good damage too. But it is pretty impressive that he's able to hit them that hard at all without that much, like, preparation. Sephiroth had to build up, like, defense penetration, piercing... yeah, that's redundant. Defense penetration and that kind of stuff. So it was cool to see how much damage he can do, and that's probably on his like every third turn type mechanic. But I hope you appreciated that look into a variety of teams that can be built and have some like data behind them. You know, we can see people using them on the JP side. We can see how successful they are at that. We can see what niches they're working well into, because you know, there's a lot of teams that do really poorly on offense, as we saw here. You know, there was a number of them here that do really well on defense, and people, especially because they don't think of them as much as they think of offense teams, and they don't see them as much as they, you know, see and think about those offense teams. You know, you don't really use defense teams necessarily in Arena, for instance. You know, because they're kind of unique like that, sometimes it takes looking through the data like this to find a really good team to trick people with. And some of these teams did a very good job of that and proved to be very potent curveballs. So use that as you will. Hopefully this gets you easier, or hopefully this gets you closer to having a really good competitive team, because a lot of these Veritas units can be made to compete with the newest of the new units and can be used to beat on selectively some of the best things in the game right now if you know what you're doing with them. And Gilgamesh included with Veritas of the Flames. So you can definitely use these characters in very powerful ways, and since they're essentially free if you've been building them up, maybe this is the third member that your team desperately needed because you couldn't afford to pull for that third meta unit. Yeah, finally. I stopped talking and they stopped working. Remember that the free-to-play... Oh my god. Remember that the free-to-play option for YouTube is to like and subscribe. Be sure to leave a comment as well. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what teams you're planning to use them on. I tend to look at the JP data exclusively for this, so I do have a little bit of a blind spot to things that maybe people are only doing on the global side. So let me know what you're doing with the Veritas units, if you know of any unique strategies, because I'd be curious, especially if I can build that team and test it. It would be very interesting to see how some of these are doing, or maybe I kind of built one wrong and you have a suggestion for different equipment or something like that, different vision cards maybe than I have access to, and maybe that can help somebody else out. Remember, the comments are great for community, so be sure to let people know what you think of these units in the comments. But also, while you're on your way down there, click the link in the description to access all the parts of the Jackie Fox Media universe. In addition to that, you want to click the bell, because I can be a little bit foul-mouthed, and sometimes that means that YouTube suppresses my views. But they won't get suppressed if you click the bell and opt in. I also have a YouTube channel in addition to this that isn't about video games, and a supporting podcast if you'd rather just listen to that on your drive to work in the car or something like that, while you're jogging, I don't know, however you live your life. But also books, if you're one of the, I don't know, it feels like a minority out there that actually reads anymore. I do have a hardback version of It Even Happens While We Sleep available for only $15 if you want to pick that one up. That's pretty much cutting it close to cost for me, so I can't make it much cheaper than that, so pick it up while it's on sale. And with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.